Good afternoon, everybody. This is the meeting of the Community Development Committee, and it's our first time doing a virtual meeting, so bear with us as we learn how to do this and try and at the same time keep everybody engaged. I'm John Strand, your chair. For the moment, let's go through and do introductions and confirm we have a quorum. If we could run around who's in the room. And maybe start with you, Melissa. We're just doing introductions.
Hello.
I'm sorry, I spoke over when you were talking, Melissa.
That's okay. Melissa Branch with the Downtown Community Partnership.
Okay, continue.
We don't know who's. Okay, John Gunkelman, Fargo Planning Commission.
Sam McDonald, member at large.
Robin Nelson, Fargo School Board.
Hi, this is Mike Rethinger, Assistant City Administrator, City of Fargo.
Linda and Mark and Thomas.
Yes, Thomas Hill is here. Yep.
Thank you, Thomas. We're just doing introductions is all, folks. And Mark and Linda, are you both there? Mark Puppy?
Yeah, Mark Puppy, HBA.
Welcome, Mark. And Linda, are you on with us? Linda Klebe? Matthew Pike, you are. No, I think you're on mute, Matthew.
Okay. I am here. Good afternoon.
Good.
Thanks, Commissioner.
And we have another one, Ken Puppy, or I'm sorry, Ken Enochson?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, did we miss anybody in the introductions? Miranda, we have a quorum, so we'll go forward. Thanks, everybody, for working with us today. It's going to be another major reporting day to catch you all up with the activities that have been going on from staff mostly. But the only action items required is, first of all, to have a motion for the approval of the agenda. Is there anybody who would present that motion?
So moved.
And who made that? I'm sorry. For the sake of Miranda, when we make a motion or second, say your name and then the motion. So who made the motion?
Robin Nelson made the motion.
Thank you, Robin. And second? Okay.
Second, Melissa Branch.
All right, so Melissa Brandt, the second on the agenda. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay. Minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes, or are there any corrections or additions as well? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the August 18th minutes.
Move to approve, John Gunkelman.
John Gunkelman, is there a second?
Thomas Hill, second.
Thank you, Thomas and John. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
nay? Okay. You guys, we have a really great turnout. Thank you all today. It's nice to see a full slate of participants. I don't know that we'll have any public comment, Tia or Miranda or Nicole. And I'm gonna back up 1 second, folks. We have 3 staff people I'd like to introduce, have them introduced as well. If we could go over to the folks over here.
Nicole Crutchfield. Miranda Wolf.
Is your mic on, Tia? There we go.
Tia Braseth.
Great. That's our, what I call our A team. We'll go on now with reports, and starting with the HUD program updates, the 5-year plan. Who will be presenting that, Tia? Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for all being here. It's good to see your faces again. It's been since August since we've last met. And you'll see a lot of items on the agenda are pretty similar to what we had last time, but with some updates this time. So Everything that's covered in HUD updates will be within this short PowerPoint presentation, starting with the 5-year plan update. So just a reminder that this 5-year plan through HUD is, we're working with a consultant, TDA Inc., and they are the ones that were originally doing all of the outreach meetings, and seems like forever ago that was, because that was back in November, pre-COVID, when we did our initial outreach. And through that outreach, which included interviews, surveys, focus groups, public meetings, the goals really resonated with what we've had for past goals with our last 5-year plan, which isn't surprising when you look at the goals of affordable housing and homelessness, poverty reduction in neighborhoods. They're pretty vague for good reason, so that we can do all sorts of projects as those needs arise in our community over a 5-year span. So we're really looking at a lot of the same things as we go into the next 5 years in terms of the types of goals that we want to achieve. So I've outlined a tentative schedule for this 5-year plan. The public comment period is November 12th through December 11th. Now I'm saying this is tentative because this is the first time that we've had the opportunity to actually feel out this schedule without chasing a deadline, because this 5-year plan and our 2020 plan that's included within it truly aren't due until August 2021. Which is quite a ways away, but that is a result of COVID. HUD has extended that due date an entire year. So there is a possibility that this timeline could change depending on how things are going. So we want to craft this schedule so that we can use it as a template from here on out, because more than likely we'll be back to a schedule where we need to be chasing those deadlines. So that's why you see tentative here. And you can see we will have a public hearing, maybe November 30th. Final City Commission approval follows that. And the goal will be to submit the plan before the end of the year to receive the 2020 funds by February or March. But, you know, a lot of things are up in the air with this pandemic, and the same goes with that for HUD. So we could have additional allocations of CDBG-CV funds for COVID. We did have one already, and I'll cover that later. But also their deadlines and timelines are a moving target also. So I just want to prepare you to be flexible for our schedule, because we may need to be flexible too. But at least you can see the process that we do need to follow whenever that does happen. So we recently held our 2020 and our 2021 notice of funding availability rounds. So this is our application process. And that ran from September 16th through October 9th. So the reason that we did the 2020 and 2021 years overlapping is because we are somewhat behind due to COVID, but we also have the leisure of being able to submit August 2021 if needed. But we're on our nearly regular schedule for our 2021 plan as of now anyway. We're about a month ahead of schedule, so we thought it made the most sense to collect all of the project ideas that are out there and the funding, and identify the funding needs for the next 18 months to 24 months. And also as a reminder that our program year runs May 1st through April 30th. So it's not your typical like January to December schedule. So we're currently in the middle of our 2020 year already, even though we don't have a 2020 approved plan yet. So this is the amount that's available for this NOFA. You can see we have quite a bit of different sources here between home funds, CDBG funds, and CDBG-CV second round. So I think back in August, I initially had talked about the first round of CV funding that we had. And now we got a second round within the last, I believe, 45 days, it was announced, 580,116. So this is a little bit more than what we initially received. And I'll give you more details. I believe it's on the last slide of this presentation. So we have a little over $2 million available for the next 18 months, and that's after moving some funding aside for admin, fair housing, homeless initiatives, and the Homeless Engagement Center, which there will be an update later on in the agenda on those items. So quite a bit of funds to do good things moving forward. Also a lot of work to do also. So I'm throwing this citizen participation plan as a slide as a reminder to everybody what process we follow, because I believe it was last year at about this time that we updated the citizen participation plan. Actually, it was a little bit further back than that, but this is the process that we must follow in order to have an approved plan. So we have to hold a public outreach meeting, which I had mentioned earlier in this presentation that we did do one in November last year for the 5-year plan, unknowing that we would, be in this pandemic and it would be this far out. But for the 2021 plan, we'll be holding another public outreach meeting for that in the near future. It might happen within the fourth quarter of this year, if not the first quarter of next year. We have to conduct a NOFA, which we just did, and I showed you a little bit of information about that, and then hold a public comment period for any of the for all of the activities that we select within our plan. Hold a public hearing, and then final city commission approval, and then finally submit to HUD. So when we were looking at our proposals that we received, the deadline to get those back was last Friday. So we are in the process of really diving in on these proposals. But the number one priority is COVID-19 prevention, preparation, and response. And that is a required requirement of the CV funds specifically. It isn't for the general CDBG funds, but we as a city have prioritized all of that for COVID-19 because there are a lot of needs out there. The second priorities, of course, would be those 5-year plan goals, and housing and homelessness being number one because there's a lot of COVID-related stuff that is within those areas, and we're really seeing the impact within the homeless community specifically and people that are on the brink of losing their housing, and same with folks experiencing poverty, and then neighborhood improvements as a final priority. So this is some of the main evaluation criteria that we are thinking about, and this is open to anything. So I mean, if you had other suggestions, like you think of something that we might want to add to this list, we're certainly able to do that. But these are the number one priority things that we're looking at right now when we're evaluating these proposals that came in. We did receive 31 proposals, which is quite a few. And the minimum request amount was $50,000. So we received exactly 15 applications between $50,000 and $100,000, and exactly 15 applications between $100,000 and $500,000, and then one that was under $50,000 for fair housing related eviction prevention, which is fantastic. So that falls under our COVID related items, and that was through the Fair Housing Center, or the High Plains Fair Housing. But anyway, so our main evaluation criteria is eligibility. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, does it meet the HUD requirements? Project type, we're certainly interested if it fits within our 5-year plan and our goals as a city. Project readiness, because it's important, as you all know, that we have to spend our funds as quickly as possible so we don't end up in a situation where we don't meet that timely expenditure goal that's conducted every year. You'll remember that we were in a predicament with that within the last 12 months, but we have since corrected that. So it's really important for us to look at this project readiness to make sure that we're not sitting on any money, because when that calculation happens in March, it's March 2nd, we want to be sure that we're going to meet that goal, especially since we've been nicked on it in the past. HUD pays pretty close attention to those things. Request amount and need, number of people served and the impact, experience and capacity with HUD grants and the proposed project and program. So is it a brand new program for the applicant, or is it something they've been doing for many years? And then staff capacity and project type for ourselves in the community development division. We just have to make sure that we don't have too many projects that we can't manage them all at the same time. But and project type too, you don't want to have too many brand new types at the same time because it's then a learning thing for us at that time. And then applicant history, whether or not they've had funding with us before and what that's looked like in our experience. So these are the pretty big things that we look at, but again, that's open to any things that you may think we're not thinking about that we maybe should be. So the next few slides, I'm just going to cover the types of proposals we got. I'm going to talk about like our COVID-19 proposals, housing proposals, public service proposals, and public facility improvements proposals. I'm not going to read off the list of everything in there, but I just wanted you guys to be able to see in an easy format the applications we did receive and the types of activities that are being proposed. So these were our COVID-19 proposals. We're hearing a lot about distance learning throughout various populations and groups, and eviction prevention is a big one, and housing assistance. Well, all of it, they're pretty significant needs that we're hearing within the community. These are the housing proposals that we have received. The first two bullets there are multifamily developments, and the last two, or the third bullet would be single family. And then the last one would likely be a future multifamily rental. These are our public service proposals that we received. So they're kind of all over the board in terms of need, and that's pretty typical, seeing that every year. Job training, various services, mental health stuff, staff, operations. And then these are the public facilities improvements proposals that we received. So there's a variety of things here too, from parking lot to bathrooms. I'll go back one. Do you have any questions about the NOFA process at this time before I go on to some of those other just file and receive kind of slides?
Anybody, if you have comments or questions, we'll be loose in our protocol here today and just start speaking up if there's quiet, then you can. Anybody at all? Any questions for Tia or feedback? Okay, Tia will continue. Okay, and if you think of anything after this meeting or whenever, I think everybody knows how to get in touch with me. Just give me a call. We can have a conversation or an email, whatever. So these last two files or slides are just for our 2019 CAPER. It's currently in a public comment period right now. If you want to see that, it's accessible on our city website. If you have any issues finding that, again, just give me a call or drop me an email and I can walk you through the website to find that or just send it to you. We will be submitting this to HUD on October 27th. And then this is the little bit of information about that additional funding round of COVID funds. So you can see the amount that we got for the first round was the $464,253, which has already been allocated to housing assistance and homeless needs in the 2019 plan. And when we're ready to allocate the $580,116, it'll also be an amendment to the 2019 plan because HUD requires wherever you do that first round, every additional round after that has to follow that same plan. So a year from now, you might see us amending our 2019 plan and question why we would be doing that, but it's a requirement by HUD at this point. So we'll be revisiting that plan quite a bit, I have a feeling. So the total CDBG-CV funds to date that are available are a little over $1 million. So we want to get those out in the community. We know there are a lot of needs. Some of the biggest requirements related to those is that 80% of those funds must be spent within 3 years of the award agreement. So they want to see that out in the community pretty quickly. But overall, we'll have 6 years to spend the rest of that. I don't foresee us going out that far. I think that first round,
a good chunk of that's already gone and we're already paying bills on it. So I'm sure that within 12 months, that first round's already going to be out within the community and keeping people housed and safe from COVID. So I imagine the 580,000 will be pretty similar, especially as we enter into fall here and you're seeing the numbers rise and whatnot. So, and then we can reimburse back to January 21st. So for example, if somebody has not been able to pay their rent and they're behind, we can go back to that date. So if they're behind on their February rent and they're still owing that, we could help with that under the housing assistance programs that we do, because I believe that was the first case of COVID that was reported in the United States. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's where that date comes from. But yeah, that pretty much concludes what I wanted to share with the committee regarding our HUD program updates. So unless there's any additional questions on these last two slides, I am finished.
Anybody have any questions for Tia and for staff? I have a question for Matthew Pike. Are you still online with us?
I am, Commissioner.
Just a thought that occurs to me when she's talking about rent assistance. Are you folks at Fargo Housing Authority working with our planning and development department for some of your needs that might potentially qualify there?
You know, Commissioner, we have not been working directly with Tia in our office where we've needed rental assistance in some isolated cases. Commissioner, one you're very familiar with, we've been able to successfully navigate through the service coordinators that we've got in our office to direct them over through the CARES program and get them sufficiently prioritized so that we get them the funds they need to either rehouse them or keep them housed. As we discussed in our board meeting on Friday, Commissioner, as you might recall, but I'll share with everybody else, we actually have not seen or experienced a lot of requests for folks who are, and we're definitely available to provide the immediate adjustments for those people who are suffering income impacts as a result of COVID and loss of jobs and therefore loss of income. We can make those adjustments immediately, and we have not seen good news so far, have not seen nearly the kind of numbers in those kinds of requests so far. We're gearing up, however, for probably a year of getting ready for possible requests when we really begin seeing economic impacts, because two things are going to happen. One is the moratorium on evictions will stop, and and businesses will continue to be impacted, and therefore we'll see additional job losses. And then resultingly, we're trying to avoid the impact on the homelessness side of things.
Thank you, Matthew. Anybody else? And I see Mayor Mahoney has joined us. Thank you, Mayor, for joining in with us. Anybody else have any questions for Tia on these HUD program updates? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on. And thank you, Tia, very much. Next will be pardon me?
I just have one question. Yeah, can we change? I know in the neighborhood studies, there's some talk of somehow helping to rehab to single family homes. Is there a program you can draw up to do that? Or I mean, in your, where you're headed, is there anything that we can do to redirect that to single family homes rehab?
The CV funding? The CDBG COVID related dollars funding, is that what you're asking for in terms of reallocating that into rehab?
Yes.
Right now, we haven't looked at that. Most of the need that we're seeing is with security deposits and rental assistance that's needed right away. And we do have a lot of funding within our home program that could be used towards single family rehab. And it typically is over 200,000 each year.
Well, I guess my question is you're going to find a way to consume the extra money. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, Nicole, were you going to answer a question, or are you coming out? Okay. Anybody else with any other HUD questions or feedback for Tia? All right, we'll go on to our next topic, item number 4, Engagement Center and Homeless COVID-19 Quarantine and Isolation unit update with Nicole Crutchfield.
Thanks, Commissioner. And yeah, I think for the next couple items, certainly open for discussion, conversation. Tia can chime in from the microphone too, so we can talk. But yeah, so the engagement center and homeless needs, and in regards to quarantine and isolation, I think there's two discussions happening right now. One is the conversion of the former police department building. It's getting quite a bit of news coverage, so hopefully you've heard about that. And there we're looking at providing isolation and quarantine for COVID positive unsheltered people or people that are housing insecure. And we're just about ready to open. Right now they could take emergency, up to 2 to 5 emergency beds effective immediately. We're ready to go there. However, we're officially open November 1st. The contractor will be finishing up the work by Wednesday, Thursday next week. I do believe they might have some, depending if it's occupied with COVID positive people, we might have some tours or some visual tours. When what we've done inside the building is quite remarkable in basically 3 weeks, and to basically convert that use to allow for people to sleep there safely under fire codes and building code issues. Luckily, we had a contractor already on board doing Gladys Ray improvements as part of last year's or 2018's CDBG work. And so we were able to extend that contractor, and he was free and able to do the remediations or the modifications at the police department building. So that's really what allowed us to move so quickly. And I think there'll be up to about 15 quarantine and isolation rooms, plus an extra, I think 7 or 8 in, I get quarantine and isolation mixed up, whichever the least restrictive is. And then we'll have some accommodations for winter overflow. And the reason that building was so attractive as well is that the city already owned it. It was already vacant. But primarily they had showers and locker rooms in there already. And so it can really operate as a day shelter, like we've been talking about as part of the Downtown in Focus plan. And so we see this as a pilot test on the day shelter concept. And we're calling it an engagement center instead of a day shelter. But the concept is the same, safe place for people to go in the winter, and also get services. We learned a lot during the first gauge of COVID, where a lot of the offices had to close due to COVID. The staff are working from home, working, virtually, and so contacting people who don't have telehealth or don't have virtual access, it was a problem. And so Jan Eliason with Gladys Ray, the harms reduction staff, has been working really hard to create MOUs, or memos of understanding and collaboration, with our service providers in mental health and service providers in homeless health, and as well as housing navigation assistance. They're on site, and they will have, basically cubicles where they can provide direct assistance to people who are unsheltered. So I think Cody Schuler, when we were talking earlier, Cody Schuler with the FM Homeless Coalition, and I think August is the one that said, can we try to build the ship while we're in the pandemic to pilot test it? And I think from there was where the wheels started turning really quickly with Jan Eliason and Cody Schuler and others in our community to see if we could stand this up really quickly, because we learned so much during COVID with so many operations again closed. And the mobile outreach as well is in progress of basically duplicating their efforts, as well as the medical outreach for homeless health in terms of getting more mobile as well to serve people. And so I think that takes care of the engagement center. The other topic we're talking about with the homeless is winter conditions. I was just looking at the minutes, and in August, can't believe so much time has gone by already, but in August, we were talking about kind of the, kind of triple whammy with cold temperatures, crowded conditions, the pandemic and flu, and then economic downturn if there's direct impact for that too. And so there's so much uncertainty. I think I was quoted in the minutes as saying how much uncertainty there is. Tia and I just left a 1 o'clock call today, and we are still uncertain. Right now, we're predicting about a need of about 75 beds or 75 heads for winter overflow, and working with on the North Dakota side, New Life Center and Gladys Ray to provide some of that extra support. Both, as you can imagine, all the shelters have to dramatically change their operations with COVID, especially when they go into occupancy overcrowding, if you will. That's typically their day-to-day operations in the winter, and they just can't do that this winter. And so we're looking at some temporary setup spaces for New Life Center, working with codes and inspections and those types of transitions. We're on weekly coordination calls with the shelter directors. The shelter directors are obviously on the daily call with each other. And luckily, for the first time, expenses aren't the issue. We have the COVID, the CDBG-CV COVID dollars to help alleviate those issues. So for the first time, we have kind of a financial response. It's just not equipping. I think the biggest number one concern we're hearing from the shelters is staffing. All of them could probably double their staff, and finding capable and willing and able people to serve those needs is training. Obviously, extensive training is part of that issue. So day to day, we're progressing on this. It's probably this element and COVID in response has probably taken 50% of our staff load in the planning department. And so just as an update to that.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Any feedback or questions for Nicole on the homeless or engagement center, homeless issues? Don't be timid. Oh, nobody?
Commissioner Strand, I
Yes,
just wanted
Melissa?
to add one
I'm sorry,
footnote
it's
to
Tia. Yep.
one footnote to that too, just for the homeless overflow. The shelters are turning away about 6 to 8 people every night already, which is higher than normal for this time of the year, as was expected.
So Tia, when they get turned away, where do they go?
The streets.
Well, right now they're staying, I think just to clarify, they'll get contacted by Sanford and other hospitals as they get dispersed from the hospitals, and they're required, so then they stay in the hospital. But yeah, right now we're spaceless. Yeah.
And the snow is flying. So as you can imagine, everybody, there's a lot of stress on our staff's shoulders and responsibility here and proactive action that they're undertaking already. But it's really good work, but who would have thought winter would be here already? Anybody else? Mayor or Michael or anybody?
I'd say real quick, just as a quick.
Yep. Who was somebody? Melissa.
Yep. I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work in the past move on this. I was able to tour that facility the other week with Jan and her team, and wow, very impressive. And thank you for moving and reacting to what's happening in downtown. Businesses and residents have already called and said thank you, and they appreciate the communication, the updates. So I just wanted to say thank you for all your hard work.
That's really good feedback, Melissa. Thank you, because you're all on a team and in the same working in the same effort. So anybody else? Nicole, don't hesitate to reach out if you need help further, and keep us apprised if you could.
And I will say, just as a small detail right now, obviously when you're in times of emergency, procurement happens really quickly, but right now we're about $350,000 worth of expenditures. And so in reality, that's kind of in my mind, a low cost when it comes to emergencies, right? And so It's really just about the coordination and the energy and focused attention that gets the ball rolling. And luckily, again, from the contributions from the allocations. But just wanted to let you know those how those costs are running at this point in time.
Nicole, just simply asking, is there any ability to use COVID emergency funds for additional staff?
Yes.
And is that being done, or are you seeing opportunities for that?
That requires more coordination than we've had time to do at this point in time. But we are talking about it in the planning department for certain. And especially when we look at some of these NOFA applications and the staff support that the response will be needed for CDBG.
Good. Somebody's mute needs to be put on. I'm not sure whose noise from their desk is coming over. Any other questions for Nicole? I would say any support we can give you for bolstering your staff with these funds, absolutely, if anybody can help with that. It's a really high need. And we also need to protect the energy levels of our people. You know, we don't need burnout, and we don't need exhaustion, and we don't need them to get stretched so thin that their ability to feel like they're effective we just want to support and bolster their efforts. Okay.
I appreciate that, Commissioner.
All right, we'll go on to the next item, number 5, master plan update.
Yeah, so when we did a call for our agenda topics, Melissa Brandt brought this forward. Her question was basically, how are we doing in relation to long-range planning for housing, commercial, and residential development compared to the Downtown and Focus Plan when it was created, which I thought was a great question, and which prompted me to look at the implementation plan, which prompted me to look at the date that was adopted. And we're basically at year 3. We're going into year 3 of the adoption. And so I just wanted to let Melissa know and the rest of the commissioners or the board members here know that we'll do an evaluation and assessment, if you will, probably towards the end of the year. We're going to see how the rest of the permitting goes through. I will say permitting is the highest it's ever been, coincidentally, who would have thought, in a pandemic. And so as we kind of tally up those, we'll have a better report for you probably in December related to the Downtown and Focus Plan. But obviously there's lots of construction, housing. I think I do know retail was, with the time of the pandemic and economic impacts, might be interesting to study. But I know, as well as the Downtown and Focus Plan talked about obviously that was pre-pandemic, is the strain of downtown kind of planning on those first floor buildings. Those first floor buildings are the hardest spaces to occupy. And so I know Kevin Hively would talk about that quite a bit in the Downtown and Focus Plan, and how to strategize for that. And so I guess I just ask Melissa, or if any other board members have questions related to this topic or specific.
Melissa?
Thank you, Nicole. I get asked that question quite often, and I think it's a great number for us to report on once you gather that, because I think there is a lot of positives and a lot of wins and a lot of growth that's happening in our city that I think anybody right now needs some positive information. And when I did present at the Chamber of Commerce with all the development projects that's happening in the heart of our city, people are excited. So if we can keep the excitement going and share a little bit tidbits and nuggets of all the work that's being done in our downtown is positive. And thank you for addressing that. And, always, people are asking for progress. So thank you for answering that, Nicole.
Okay, anybody else with the master plan discussion topic? All right, number 6, land development code, diagnostic and core neighborhood plan update. Is that you, Nicole?
It is. And not a whole lot of new information to share. On the land development code diagnostic, we are scheduling and everybody will be invited to this. So we'll look for some press releases, but November 30th, we'll have a virtual presentation on the evaluation of the diagnostic, where we're looking at introducing 3 options three options for next steps. And so with the Land Development Code Diagnostic, there was a publication published that should be available on the city website. We can send those links to you if you have trouble finding them. But basically through the public input and their evaluation of the current codes and long-range plans, there is an evaluation done. Now at this stage of the Land Development Code, the consultant, Lisa Weiss, working closely with Aaron Nelson in our office, is doing an evaluation based on metrics on recommendations. So they'll have 3 recommendations for you to consider. And you can pretty much imagine it's, kind of small, medium, and big type of scale of considerations. And we'll be publishing a memo here to go with a presentation on November 30th. But then at that point, that really starts to roll next steps and broader discussion amongst the city commissioners and appointed board members like yourselves on, what is the appetite for change and the readiness for change in our, appointed and elected officials. And so I think that's where some additional community dialogue. So expect for that dialogue to kind of kick off end of November, early December, and depending on where we're at with the pandemic and everybody's appetite with the holidays, we might need to continue that conversation into January. But that's where we're at. We're pretty much at this last stage of the diagnostic. And so we're really excited. We've seen the first draft of it at the staff level, provided some review comments. We'll get that newer draft version here probably in the next few days, hopefully within a week. And so it's progressing nicely. And I think there's some really good range of options for the community to consider. So we're excited about that level.
Nicole, I'm curious, are some of our members in the Community Development Committee at the table already and working with these efforts?
The Land Development Code Diagnostic did not have a steering committee like we do for the core neighborhood plan. That the diagnostic was more open house and public. So we did the open houses this time last year, and then a lot of deep dive with the attorneys and developers and the users of the code, and to understand where those pain points are on the land development code. So that's kind of where their input was. And then at this point, it was really an academic exercise on, we've heard this is what the rest of the country does on these types of codes, and then understands our kind of appetite. So it's a pretty academic type of level. And then moving forward, we'll want to have definitely some public dialogue and community, roundtables as that makes sense.
However, with the core neighborhood plan, there's a lot of citizen engagement.
Yeah, so that's almost opposite, if you will. So that, we have the 9 steering or community neighborhood committees, as well as the steering committee. And so I know, Linda and Tom and yourself, Commissioner, are on the steering committee, and then I know others have been active in the neighborhood meetings. And at that stage, the stage we're at right now, they're starting to come into some recommendations, testing those recommendations out on the committee members, and we're probably looking for introductions and broader conversations here probably in November or December. And so maybe I'll pause there because I know there's yourself and members of the committee that might have some direct input that they want to share as part of the core neighborhood plan right now, and give us a sense how they think things are going or feedback.
Okay, opening the table up to anybody. Ken, John?
I think that the output has been positive and interesting. I think there's a little disappointment as far as the drop-off in participation, at least in our neighborhood representation. I think the whole COVID thing seems to really kind of I don't know, the momentum for as far as participation from residents seems to have depleted that. So that would be the one sort of negative comment that doesn't have anything to do with the consultants or staff or anything. It's just kind of the state of things, I guess. But no, I think we've been impressed with the output of the staff, the consultants. And I think we're excited to see where this goes.
Okay, John Gunkelman, anything you'd like to add in?
I just think it's gonna be interesting how the land development code diagnostic and possibly the combination of the two studies being done at the same time, how they're going to maybe help reflect on coming out with a better land development code.
Okay, anybody else? Robin Nelson, one of the things I see you representing the school board there, and what I really appreciated and learned when I was working with you is they really got caught up on their strategic planning. And we're doing that really well at the city right now. So we're going to get up to par with the school district and have contemporary futuristic plans in place, which will be our roadmaps. And your district has been a good example for all of us for that as well. Okay.
Thank you for those kind words.
Well, it's really necessary to have these plans in place, and yet with COVID, you know, I guess we have new dynamics. Okay. Anything else for this topic for the moment on land development code or neighborhood planning? For
No, and I would just echo
Okay.
Commissioner Ken's comment. Yeah, we sat in on, I think last week or the week before was the last round of community meetings, and yeah, it's really, you know, the attrition rate on those participating. We knew it was going to be a heavy community engagement kind of process, and that attrition rate is starting to show and fall out. We have been conscientious of that, and I think it's more, you know, one of the things I've been advising staff, it's more important to get it right than to get it done on time, you know, these kind of imaginary deadlines. And so so if we need to circle back after we get through this stage of planning, not that we want to be in strategic plan era forever, but there is going to be a continually, you know, kind of living document now that we can continue to like work from and adapt and use as a reference point. So we do recognize that dropout rate is a little disappointing as well.
Okay. Anybody else?
Commissioner,
Yes.
Strand, this is Thomas. I think maybe to add on to that a little bit, maybe just one idea that I've looked at in that core neighborhood plan is obviously Robin is a part of it from the school board standpoint. I just like to, if we can, try and encourage school building personnel to be part of those conversations, especially in the neighborhoods that we're talking about helping to redevelop or to, you know, incentivize neighborhood participation. I think the building staff and principals will have a lot of valuable input, and hopefully those neighborhood schools can be used, obviously when it's safe and appropriate to do so, as hubs for services and conversations to invite people in to talk about things that are important in that neighborhood, and hopefully showcase some of the work that's been done in that core neighborhood plan, just so people don't think that it's just the city, you know, kind of doing this plan and saying, okay, now we're going to shelve it, but really trying to engage the residents. And I think the neighborhood schools that Fargo has worked so hard at trying to keep up are going to be really, really good points of contact for residents.
Thank you, Thomas.
Robin?
Yeah, Thomas, what do you need me to do? I know that we have a board appointee, Rebecca Knudsen, on this committee. If I can help facilitating those conversations, I'd be happy to do so. So you just tell me what you need.
Absolutely, and I think, Robin, you know, of course, I've got really open lines of communication to you, and so I think just as the plan gets finalized, I think it would be really great to even showcase it to the neighborhood schools, whether it be at, you know, Jefferson, Horace Mann, Lincoln, places like that. I think just even sitting down with the principal and saying, this is how the city wants to engage with, you know, residents around your district to really help you. That might be a great opportunity just to start. And again, I don't want to belabor this with everyone, but I just think that might be an opportunity to try and think about that, of getting it down to the ground level in those neighborhoods.
And might I add, PTA meetings might be helpful as well.
That's really good thinking. You know, it's worth noting, and of course we all know this, but I'm going to guess, Nicole and Tia and Miranda, you can correct me, but of those 9 neighborhoods we're studying, I think every one of them is named after a school almost, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So they're all like the Madison school neighborhood. I mean, they're all school district determined, that's how we identify our core neighborhoods in our community, is by the schools. It's a great relationship to have and to protect. Robin.
Commissioner Strand, and we are considering also pairing Madison McKinley at this point as our Horseman Roosevelt and Claire Barton Hawthorne. And part of that spin is to provide that quality education. And you, as you well know, John, be on the school board, if schools get too small, there isn't enough class choices for students and no professional development. So we are looking at this as a way to stabilize these neighborhoods as opposed to empty those schools. I think that is the consensus of the board at this time, but we haven't decided anything. But I know that there are some people on this committee that are part of those paired schools, and we might need some help in communicating that to Madison and McKinley residents.
So Robin, continuing just for a moment, you already have a few examples of paired neighborhood schools already, don't you?
Correct. Horseman and Roosevelt are paired, and Clara Barton and Hawthorne are paired. And that started in the early 2000s when there was discussion about decommissioning some of those underpopulated and underutilized schools. And so that pairing concept has really stabilized those neighborhoods. I know Ken can probably talk to that in the Roosevelt neighborhood. It's been a very positive movement, not only for the neighborhood stability, but also the education of those students because of that sweet spot of sizes in schools.
All right, anybody else?
John,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Yes.
I wanted to echo a little bit of what John had said earlier, that I think one of the key factors is seeing how the LDC and the core neighborhood plan needs to really be coordinated, and ultimately I think this falls back to the commissioners to ensure that this is actually, we see implementation, because I think the last thing that we want to see is a plan made and approved, but then we don't see any sort of action on it. So I think that's a critical piece, that there's some concern on our part as far as where we go from the point of saying, okay, here's a finished product.
That's a really good point, Ken. It doesn't need to gather dust on a shelf. It's a living, dynamic approach that we all embark on. Anybody else? Nicole, anything else on? All righty. Our next topic is announcements. And I'm just curious, when I look at our membership here, we have Fargo Housing Authority and Downtown Community Partnership and Planning Commission and United Way and Fargo Public Schools and Home Builders Association and citizens sitting on the commission who bring different skill sets. Do any of you have anything you need or would like to put on our radar today relative to the moment in time we're in? Or just topics to throw at us or future agenda items? It's if you have a moment, if you have anything to contribute right now or updates just for the good of the day order, by all means, I welcome you to.
Commissioner, this is Matt Pike. My only note for the day, which is to thank the mayor and you, Commissioner Strand, and Commissioner Preston for the mayor's mandate yesterday with regards to masks. It was very thoughtful. It was very timely. It was much appreciated. I immediately adopted it on behalf of the Housing Authority and distributed it to staff by 6:30 last night or 7 o'clock last night, and ran it by my board. So I just wanted to thank all of you for that foresight and the courage to do it, and so thank you for that. And I just wanted to let you know how we, as your partners at the Housing Authority, followed up.
Okay, that's a really good point. Anybody else? Melissa, you probably have some thoughts on that for the downtown businesses as well.
Well, my phone was ringing, on both sides of, the decision. So, I think businesses, we just need to allow them to run their business. And so I think there's a mixed emotion right now in downtown from what I've heard and gathered.
These are definitely challenging times. Robin.
John, I have one item. And Melissa, we're trying to keep to the business not to shut down. That's a real concern right now. I got a message from the governor's office that there was a commission on homelessness. And there was a report that Hovind started with 10 years ago that I believe was finished in 18 or 16 or something. Nicole would know the time. And I was amazed because I was called last week on a call to agenda. Do we have anything to report to the governor and or the legislative body that we need to do to address homelessness? And it's an open report and an open commission. And I was amazed. We had an agenda last week that had nothing on it. And then we're going to meet December 12th or 2nd. And we're going to have an agenda, but we have to forward them what the agenda items might be. And I asked Nicole about it. I said, well, are we missing an opportunity here? Because if the governor has a special commission just on homelessness and we bring forth no recommendations, that almost sounds like we got it solved. We don't have anything to talk about. So I was just requesting, John, that maybe we look at that, what our recommendations as a team is to the state, what we see and what we're concerned about and what the solutions might be. Nicole may organize me better than that, but I'm just, I think that is something with the members on community development that we might have some options to tell them. And I don't want to burden the planning staff with a huge amount of work, but I just want to, there must be somebody in their head that has 5 different things that we think would be very helpful, and it could include funding.
Thank you, Mayor. I would suggest any of you members take the mayor up on that offer and email him and me and Nicole and staff any tips or suggestions or ideas to get on our radar and in the mix of our discussion. It's a really valid point, and this is one of our primary focuses is community development, besides neighborhoods and poverty, is homelessness. Really a good point. Robin, you were going to say something?
Yes, I would also like to acknowledge the face mask mandate. Studies are showing that our kids are not transmitting to each other, nor are they transmitting to teachers. So really that the community is what is affecting our school attendance right now. The close contact piece, not the actual infections. So this time has really proven to me how important our community and how many cogs need to be working if our schools are in session, employees have their kids taken care of, and it also prevents the unemployment and the homelessness. So we're all working together, and the school district is trying very hard to talk about masks and how important they are to get our kids in school and how important they are to our economy, society. And I appreciate that leadership as well, because it was getting pretty ugly down at the bottom of the end of those. So I appreciated your comments, Mayor Mahoney, on a radio show that said, just blame it on me and tell everybody they need to wear masks. And really and truly, that is what some good leaders do. So I appreciate your feedback there too. We're all in this together.
That's really good feedback, Robin. Thank you. Thomas Hill, do you have any updates from United Way? You might be seeing things you might want to alert us to?
I guess tons, but I think the biggest thing at this point, in addition to, we're really grateful to partner with the city on efforts to try and prevent and divert families from being homeless. I think Nicole's comments earlier about, the new engagement center, absolutely, it's a necessary piece. We need emergency shelter, but we also need to make sure that if people are able to do so, they can safely quarantine or isolate in their own residence. Eviction moratoriums are going to absolutely be an issue for us. So we're really continuing to try and push and invest in efforts to prevent and divert people from becoming homeless. I think the biggest thing of the month that we've really started looking at is how to support distance learning efforts. And so I was really encouraged to see a couple of proposals, both from the Boys and Girls Club, and also I think from the South Sudanese Lutheran Church, to support efforts, because especially students that may have linguistic difficulties or parents may not speak English in their own home or predominantly in their homes, we absolutely need to support those students to ensure that more academic learning time is not lost and that they're going to be even at a bigger gap when we come through a pandemic, whenever that may be. And so we're working with the FMRE Foundation. Nicole and Tia are very in tune with our efforts to try and support students across the Metro School Districts. So I think distance learning for us is going to be something that we're going to see a lot of proposals for. I think that's probably the most timely thing, but just please know that as commissioners, Mr. Mayor, all our other partners, we're very, very focused on trying to prevent and divert families from homelessness, but also knowing that we have to support kids while learning isn't stopping, even during the pandemic. So we need to support those community-based efforts. And I think Robin and her team at the Boys and Girls Club and a lot of ethnic-based organizations are doing some phenomenal work, and just encourage us to really look at that and support it as a community.
Thank you, Thomas, very much. Linda Klebe or Sam McDonald is our community voices. Anything you'd like to alert us to?
No, I don't have anything at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Linda, if you're there. Mark Puppy as well, welcome from the Home Builders. I think this is your first meeting with us. Feel free to join in if you'd have anything to add.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I know this is a little bit off topic agenda-wise, but these last few minutes, besides the work, the sharings from our staff of all these different efforts going on, it's just really some gargantuan tasks being undertaken. But then when I hear and we see, the community sees the voices of our leadership around the table and all the different entities you represent and agencies and people you represent, I just need to thank you all for your public service, for being willing to stand up and engage and share your skill sets and your passion. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. And just give yourselves a pat on the back for your own roles in this community, because everybody's challenged these days and you all have purviews that affect other people that we may not all be aware of. So continuing on, we have a staff report. Tia, would you like to just touch base on us with the staff report? Or Nicole, would it be?
Yeah, I can. Basically, the staff report is fairly short, and basically just to bring your attention to two internal in-house research projects that we're doing. One, Karen Flum on our staff is actually leading both of these items with Aaron Nelson on our staff and other community partners. But the first one is, at the end of the day, we're really wanting to be able to understand how many are impacted by COVID in terms of housing, and in particular to housing. And so we are also getting a lot of mixed reports. There's not a whole lot of research collection happening, right? And so when we look at our action agencies and Seneca and the relief bridge, the rent relief bridge, the mortgage assistance, trying to figure out where those gaps are, because we know people are falling through the gaps. And we're also understanding there's an emergency relief need, and then there's like, you've heard sometimes County Commissioner Chad Peterson say this, that sometimes people wait till Friday at midnight when they decide they're in an emergency and need food, as opposed to because they're just discovering this for the first time, or kind of being able to acknowledge that for the first time. And so we're finding that there's a lot of groups out, not a lot, but groups that are doing emergency relief kind of under the table. And so that's not getting picked up by 211 and other more organized efforts, and so we're trying to get an understanding of how big that gap is. And so Karen has helped us to develop some clarity and research on these types of questions and figure out particularly how it impacts housing and housing assistance. And so the second part of the work she's doing is related to housing ownership. And you've heard us talk over the years, the rental versus housing ownership percentages in our community. And then there's the City of Fargo rates, but then there's also the metro-wide rates. And we are partnering with NDSU Center of Social Research for a small little research project that will help us get a little better understanding of the characteristics related to the homeowner versus individuals that rent versus own, so we can maybe see how that might impact policies. So those two little studies of interest And both staff initiated as some of our staff had availability. As some of their other projects die off because of COVID, these are some projects that are allow us to spend some time on.
Thank you, Nicole. That'll be really good information. That moving range of ratio of ownership versus rentals is kind of a moving target. It's hard to get current information, and there's a lot of different sources. So I look forward to getting that information, and it will be very, very relevant to the Community Development Committee. Okay. Anybody have any points for the good of the order before we adjourn? Any staff updates? Is there anything we missed? I want to thank you all for participating in this virtual meeting. I think we may have more of this going forward. It's kind of nice. I can look on the screen and see who's all there, and there's some good to this. But last point I'll make is if you have topics to advance to our staff to get on future agendas, don't be hesitant sharing your ideas with us, things that fit our purview and our reach and that are in our lane. So don't hold back letting Nicole and Tia and Miranda and I know what topics you'd like us to vet. Okay? Anything else? If not, we will stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, and stay well and safe and take care of each other. Okay? Bye-bye now.